She'd been working 2 jobs and finally managed to carve out a moment to rest, her fingers shaking as she typed a desperate message to an old friend, then realized she'd sent it to a stranger. She thought this mistake would change nothing, that exhaustion and life's weight would swallow it. But the man on the other end wasn't who she expected. He was a billionaire with the world at his fingertips, and suddenly, her heartbreak, her hopes, her every silent prayer had found an audience in a man with unimaginable power. What she didn't know in that instant was that this message would become the doorway to something that would upend both their lives. Because desire and desperation collided across a screen, and everything she thought she controlled slipped out of reach. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Sarah Miller was 32 years old, a single mother to her bright-eyed 3-year-old son, Liam. That night at the airport, she was running on fumes, juggling a diaper bag, a carry-on, and a boarding pass that felt heavier than the world she carried. The flight was nearly full, voices overlapping in a blur of announcements and hurried footsteps. As she stepped into the narrow aisle, her heart sank. Only one empty seat remained, and it was beside a sharply dressed man whose watch alone could have paid her rent for years. His eyes met hers briefly, a glance that seemed polite, almost too polite. Why did this millionaire single her out? What was his real motive? And what happened after that flight would change everything she thought she knew about herself, her safety, and the man who now sat beside her in the dim cabin light. Sarah Miller's life was a balancing act between survival and hope. By day, she served coffee and scrambled eggs to regulars at the corner diner, her smile warm, but her eyes betraying sleepless nights. By evening, she swapped her apron for rubber gloves, scrubbing empty office floors until the small hours. Every dollar mattered. Every minute with her 3-year-old son, Liam, was a gift she could barely afford. Her dream was modest by most standards, saving enough to move out of their cramped apartment and into a neighborhood where Liam could play outside without her heart tightening in fear. Those who knew her described her as resilient, even cheerful, though she carried the quiet weight of someone who rarely let herself rest. David Reeve's world was the opposite. In his mid-40s, the wealthy investor was the kind of man the business press admired, and the tabloids circled like hawks. His portfolio stretched from tech startups to real estate developments, and whispers linked him to political figures and backroom deals. He appeared at charity galas, offering checks that made headlines, but no one could say with certainty what motivated him. On that flight, the details seemed ordinary. A luxury watch catching the cabin light, a phone screen glowing as his fingers typed quickly, and the brief but curious glances exchanged between flight attendants. What Sarah didn't know was that David's seat on that flight was no accident. Not long after Sarah settled into the seat, Liam began to fuss, his small voice rising above the steady hum of the engines. She tried everything: soft words, a bottle, a favorite toy, but his restlessness only grew. Then, without a word, David Reeve extended his arms, asking if he could hold the boy. Sarah hesitated, searching his expression for any sign of discomfort or impatience. She saw none. Reluctantly, she handed Liam over, and within minutes, her son's head had found the crook of David's shoulder, his breathing even and calm. It was the first time in days Sarah felt her own muscles release, the tension in her spine easing as she exhaled. They spoke in low tones. David's questions were polite yet edged with a curiosity that seemed almost too focused. He asked about her work, her family, the city she lived in, never offering much about himself in return. Midway through the flight, a storm rolled in. The cabin lights flickered, a brief shudder passing through the plane as it dipped slightly. In that moment, Sarah noticed a flight attendant pause by David's seat, slipping a small, unmarked envelope into his hand. His movement was quick, practiced. He slid it into the inside pocket of his jacket without breaking eye contact with her. Hours later, as the wheels touched down and passengers gathered their belongings, David turned to her. His tone was warm, almost casual, as he offered her a ride home. Sarah froze, her grip tightening on Liam's hand. For a long moment she said nothing, weighing the kindness he had shown against the quiet unease now pressing at the edges of her mind. Sarah declined the offer for a ride, forcing a polite smile as she explained she preferred to take the bus. David didn't press, only gave a slight nod before stepping away into the crowd. She carried Liam through the terminal, boarded the late-night bus and stared out the window as the city lights blurred past. By the time they reached their neighborhood, rain was falling, and all she could think about was sleep. The next morning, she switched on the television for background noise while making breakfast. That's when she saw his face. The headline scrolled across the bottom of the screen. Business tycoon linked to high-profile missing persons case. David Reeve's photograph filled the frame, the same calm eyes she'd met only hours earlier. Moments later, there was a knock at her door, 2 plainclothes officers asking questions. They explained her name had come up on a passenger list and that they needed to know every detail of her interaction with him. Sarah recounted the basics, leaving out the envelope. That night, she watched as news outlets argued over David's character. Some called him a philanthropist, a man unfairly targeted. Others painted him as a manipulative predator hiding behind charm and wealth. Days later, the first message arrived. No greeting, no name, just the words, "Don't talk to the police." Her stomach turned cold. She tried to convince herself it was some kind of prank until a second message appeared hours later. "We know where you live." Then, one afternoon, while searching for her keys, Liam tugged on her arm and held out a business card he'd found inside her bag. It was David's. She stared at it, her mind racing, certain she had never put it there. The calls from the police became more frequent, each one probing deeper into Sarah's brief encounter with David Reeve. Then one evening, an officer's tone shifted. He told her David had been under surveillance for months. Authorities suspected him of laundering millions through offshore accounts, his name quietly circulating in connection to an international human trafficking investigation. Sarah felt her breath catch. It didn't fit with the man who had calmed Liam so gently, but the weight of the allegations was undeniable. As she tried to recall every detail of the flight, one memory came sharply into focus. The moment during turbulence when David spoke softly into his phone, mentioning a name she'd never heard before. Later, a detective confirmed that name was linked to a known criminal network. Days passed in tense silence until, without warning, her phone rang from a blocked number. She almost let it go to voicemail, but instinct made her answer. It was David. His voice was steady but urgent. He told her she was in danger, not from him, he insisted, but from people who now believed she knew too much. He claimed the envelope he'd received on the flight contained information that could bring down dangerous men, and that refusing to talk to him would only make her more vulnerable. Sarah's mind raced. Every warning from the police clashed with the calm conviction in his voice. Against her better judgment, she agreed to meet him, but only in a public place, where witnesses could see them both. The cafe Sarah chose was small but busy, the kind of place where conversations blended into a low hum and no one paid much attention to strangers. She arrived early, seating herself near the window where she could watch the street. When David walked in, he looked exactly as he had on the flight, composed, confident, and somehow untouched by the storm of accusations surrounding his name. Without ordering, he sat across from her and slid a small, black flash drive across the table. His voice was low but urgent as he told her it contained evidence that could not only clear his name, but also expose men whose influence reached far beyond business or politics. Before she could ask a single question, the door swung open. Officers poured in, their voices commanding as they surrounded David. The room fell silent as he raised his hands and allowed himself to be led away. In the chaos, no one noticed the flash drive still resting under her palm. That night, after putting Liam to bed, Sarah sat at her kitchen table and plugged it into her old laptop. At first, the files looked like a collection of documents and transaction records. Then she found the photographs. Her breath caught. Image after image showed herself and Liam, at the diner walking home from daycare, sitting on the park bench near their apartment. All taken before the day she boarded that flight. And in that moment, Sarah realized she was never just a random passenger. Sarah froze instantly upon this discovery, the dim light of her kitchen casting long shadows across the walls. The photos remain on her laptop screen, undeniable proof that someone had been watching her long before she met David Reeve. What would you have done if you were in Sarah's place? Would you trust him or walk away? Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Wealthy investor David Reeve remains in custody, awaiting trial. His legal team maintains he is innocent of all charges. Prosecutors allege otherwise. After months of questioning and constant media attention, Sarah moved to a safer neighborhood. She worked quietly, determined to give Liam the normal childhood she'd always dreamed of for him. For a time, life seemed ordinary again, until the day the past found its way back. Early evening, Sarah retrieves a small brown package from her doorstep. No return address. Her hands tremble slightly as she carries it inside. She opens it. Inside, a single object wrapped in tissue paper. Liam's toy plane from the flight years ago. Its chipped wing is instantly recognizable. She stares at it for a long moment. No note. No explanation. Some encounters change your life forever. Others never let you go. Please leave a comment on what you think would be Sarah's next actions after receiving this package.